Hey guys, it's about time we finally got to talk about this. So let's talk about the state of the Crucible and its current, don't like using this word, but meta. Since the release of update 0.04, I mean 2.1.1, the race was on to see what kind of new weapon would be used the most. Now there is still a good variety as opposed to the last word in Thorn days, so let's get into which weapons are leading the charge. Right now the most common and most used weapon is hands down the Mida Multi-Tool. While the multi-tool is the most wielded and is one of the more balanced weapons to rule the Crucible, it's not an incredibly overpowered weapon by any means. If there was anything I could pick on it for, and this is if I was really looking for something, it might be the flinch it causes, but still it's an overall very good gun for the time being. If it's not the Mida, then it's one other primary being used on a massive scale, and that's the last word. Since the new update, this weapon has seen some more play due to in part of the slight buff hand cannons received. Partner this along with the quick time to kill it possesses, and you have a very lethal weapon indeed. These two weapons being used on top is a great deal better than Vanilla Destiny when we had the Suros regime, or when the big three, Thorn, Last Word, and Hawkmoon, were causing terror for all the players. As for actual weapon types, I thought it would be good to go down the list and talk about some weapons that lead the pack in each type, so let's get to it. First we'll start with Scout Rifles. Right now Scout Rifles in the Crucible are in a pretty good place. They don't seem useless, and they aren't overpowered either. For these, obviously, Mida is recommendation number 1. Other than that, some guns would be the Talalok if you play a Warlock, Colavance's Duty from the Iron Banner, Hung Jury, and the Jade Rabbit. There are a few others that would fit here, such as the Inward Lamp, Treads Upon Stars, or the Suros DIS-43, but those would be based upon the roles that apply to each weapon. Next up we have Pulse Rifles, the former king of Crucible, which got knocked down a bit due to the new update, but they are certainly still viable in PvP play. Right now for Pulse Rifles, high rate of fire ones seem to be the way to go, since the damage reduction on the higher impact ones has happened. They are still in a good place right now, but require you to be more accurate upon firing, really aiming for those critical shots to down your foe. Weapons that would be a bright spot would be the Bad Juju, PDX-45, and Hawksaw. Some of the higher impact pulses can still be usable, such as the Red Death and the No Time to Explain. Along with these few, Reflection Sum and Nerwin's Mercy are good legendary pulses to aim for. As you can see, there's still variety in Pulse Rifles, but not complete dominance. Hand cannons seem to be making their way back into the Crucible after 2.0 seemed to have banished most of the non-exotics away. The increase to base range helps, and they seem to be more reliable in various forms. As stated previously, the Last Word is the most popular for the time being. Other options would include just about every exotic hand cannon. Ace of Spades is a great option for hunters. The first curse can be fatal with its impact being highest in the weapon type, and even Thorn is making its way back into regular Crucible. While taking your light down significantly, it can be used in competitive PvP such as Trials of Osiris and Iron Banner, though not to the great effect it once was. What's left for exotic hand cannons is the Hawkmoon, which is a great weapon to use, probably my most used, but recently it hasn't been as effective due to it firing quote-unquote phantom bullets. I'll post a link to the video showing what I'm talking about, but simply put, shots from the Hawkmoon will not register some of the time. Meaning you may have a body shot dead center or a perfect headshot, but when you pull that trigger, it will not do any damage. Fixing this one issue would put Hawkmoon in a perfect spot, I think. As for non-exotic options, the few great weapons that are still around would be Fenilla's Peril, the Water Star, and the Ias Luna. Using these felt fine, and though then again its usefulness will depend on the role, they are great options for those trying to use an exotic in another slot. Auto rifles are the last primary, and while 0.04% may not do anywhere near anything to these guns, there are still a few bright spots out there that are usable in Crucible. First off, we have the Hardlight. Now this weapon may not seem as viable, but its non-existent damage falloff makes it notable, and while it might not be the best choice, it is good for longer range encounters. Zalo Supercell is another shining star in the Crucible for auto rifles. Its medium impact and rate of fire partnered with the perk to Chain Lightning can be great for taking groups out in a quick fashion. Suros Regime has also made a brief return, though it's very rare. Finally, for a non-exotic option, the Doctrine of Passing or the Arminius D with stability perks are a great choice. Few things are as satisfying as watching an enemy's health just melt away. While auto rifles have a few spots that are worth noting, the new update did nothing amazing for them, and I think that a slight boost to impact, at least to lower rate of fire autos, would help immensely. They're so close to being what we need, they're just not quite there yet. Secondaries and heavies are up next, and I promise they won't be that long. With that being said, let's continue. Fusion rifles, getting straight to the point, are a non-factor entirely. For some reason, the idea is to continue nerfing a weapon type that is so rarely used that it becomes non-existent. Though not many, the recommendations here would be high-impact fusion rifles with good perks, mainly focusing on stability and range. I've had success with the Midha's Reckoning, but since they're mainly effective at a close range, I would suggest shotguns over these any day. Sniper rifles have seen some popularity since shotguns got a nerf, and it seems players are beginning to get fed up with them. Mainly the high-impact snipers rather than lower-impact, high-rate-of-fire ones. I think they're in a pretty good place right now, especially since there's no real way to nerf a good headshot. Suggestions here would obviously be the 1,000-yard stare, which leads the pack. The Irene RR4 and the Hunter exclusive Still Piercer are also incredibly viable. For some higher rate of fire snipers, the Defiance of Yasmin and Glass Promontory would be your snipers to look out for. Now, let's talk about shotguns. Shotguns have been the bane of players in PvP for some time now, and since the new update, I can say they are still pretty deadly. Admittedly, they aren't as dominant as before, and running around with a shotgun acting as a primary has not been as common as it once was, but those higher range shotguns will still hit from a fair distance away. I would recommend Invective, Didris' Retort, Party Crasher, and the Conspiracy Theory D, all with range-based perks preferably. Moving on to heavy weapons and starting with machine guns, if you're in the Crucible, the machine gun to go to is the Quillam's Terminus. Hands down, this is the machine gun to use. If you don't own one, then there's still fair options such as the Bredomart Stand and the Thunderlord if you have an exotic slot to spare. Regarding rocket launchers, there's mainly two types to look for here. The two would be a launcher with tracking or with grenades and horseshoes. Any rocket with a high blast radius and those perks will easily do the job. If an exotic slot is available though, I would suggest Truth because it's the main sensible weapon to look at. Heavy weapons overall are fine and have never really had a main issue, so no real touch-up needed here. So to summarize all that up into a statement, the state of the Crucible is probably the best it's ever been. Variety is all over, and it seems that we're getting so close to having a balanced Crucible. A couple of tweaks would be great, but for now, surprisingly, I like the Crucible we're in. So, what about you? Let me know in the comment section what you think of all the Crucible changes for the time being. What changes would you make? Do you disagree with what I think? Let me know why. But that'll about do it here, Guardians. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe for more Destiny content.